It started out like any other day. Just another Tuesday morning, dragging myself through the motions of high school. I remember yawning as I walked into my history class, dropping my backpack next to my desk, and slumping into my seat. Nothing special. Just the usual. The bell rang, and kids shuffled in one by one. Ms. Carter, our history teacher, was already writing on the board. She always had this stiff, uptight energy, like she didn't really want to be there. She wasn't the worst teacher I'd had, but she was far from the best. You could tell she didn't connect with us, especially not the black students. There was always this weird tension in her class, like she was tolerating us more than teaching us. Then Jada walked in. She was quiet, like always. Soft-spoken. Smart as hell, though. The kind of girl who didn't talk unless she had something real to say. She kept to herself most of the time, but everyone respected her. She had this peaceful, calm way about her. You could tell she was raised right. You could tell she had a good heart. Miss Carter started the lesson. It was about the civil rights movement, Martin Luther King Jr., Rosa Parks, all the names we hear every year in February. But something about how she taught it felt off, cold, rushed, like she just wanted to check the box and move on at one point. Jada raised her hand. She asked a thoughtful question, something about how the movement connected to modern issues we're facing today. I don't remember the exact words, but I remember the tone. She was trying to make a connection. She wanted a real conversation. But Miss Carter? She froze. She gave Jada this look. You know the one. That condescending, here we go again, kind of look. Then she said, well, back then, people like you had to fight for a seat at the table. Now, everyone wants to be handed everything without doing the work. The whole class went quiet. My stomach dropped. I looked at Jada, and she just sat there, stunned, like she didn't know if she'd heard her right. But Miss Carter didn't. Stop there. She went on about how everyone always wants to make things about race, and how some people need to stop playing the victim and focus on responsibility instead. And as she said this, she looked directly at Jada, not even subtle about it. You could feel the air leave the room. Some kids laughed under their breath, not because it was funny, but because they were uncomfortable. Others looked down at their desks, pretending they hadn't heard anything. No one spoke up, not even me. And I hate that part. I really do. Jada didn't say a word. She just gathered her things, slowly, quietly, and walked out of the classroom. Her head was down, but I saw her hand tremble. Her body was screaming the pain her voice wouldn't let out. Ms. Carter didn't call after her, didn't ask if she was okay. She just kept teaching like nothing had happened. I didn't even know what to think. I felt sick. 20, maybe 30 minutes passed. Then the door opened again. This time it wasn't Jada. It was a tall black man in a dark navy suit. His presence filled the room before he even said a word. You could tell. This was Jada's father. His face was calm, but his eyes, they told a different story. He was holding back a storm. Ms. Carter, he said, his voice firm but respectful. May I have a word with you? She looked startled. I don't think she was expecting him. She nodded nervously and started walking toward the door, like she thought he wanted to talk outside. But he didn't move. No, he said. Right. Here, in front of everyone. He stood at the front of the classroom, just behind her desk, and looked around at all of us. My daughter came home last week upset because of how she was treated in this class. I told her to be patient. I told her to rise above it. But today, she called me from the hallway. She was crying, and I knew then, enough was enough. Ms. Carter tried to interject. Sir, I believe there's been a misunderstanding. But he raised his hand slightly, not aggressively, just enough to say, let me finish. He looked right at her and said, "You are supposed to be a teacher, someone our children can trust. But what you did today? That was not teaching. That was humiliation. You made my daughter feel small. You took her voice and twisted it into something ugly. And for what? Because she asked a question you didn't want to answer honestly?" He turned toward us again. His voice softened, but somehow felt even more powerful. "You all deserve better. You deserve to ask questions. You deserve to be heard. You deserve to be treated like you matter. Because you do. Your history is not a burden. It's a legacy. And no one has the right to shame you for it." He paused. For a moment, I could feel a lump rising in my throat. Others were visibly emotional too. No one was playing around anymore. Then he looked back at Ms. Carter. "My daughter is not your lesson in humility. She is not here to be corrected or silenced. She is here to learn, to grow, and to be proud of who she is. And I will not let you, or anyone, take that from her." Without waiting for a response, he turned and walked out. Silence followed him out the door. The kind of silence that lingers, that haunts. That day changed something in all of us. Ms. Carter didn't return the next day. A substitute took over for the rest of the semester. We never really got the full story, but we all knew. Parents talked. The principal got involved. Meetings were held behind closed doors, and Jada, she came back 2 days later. Her hair was pulled back neatly, her notebook in hand, and she walked into that classroom like she belonged. Because she did. She didn't say anything about what happened. She didn't need to. Her presence said it all. She walked with quiet strength, the same strength I'd seen in her father. And from that day forward, I paid attention, not just to what teachers said, but how they said it. I watched how they treated us. I saw what I hadn't wanted to see before. That sometimes, even in a place meant for learning, we have to fight just to be treated with basic respect. But I also learned something else. That love, a father's love, can walk into a room and shift the whole atmosphere. It doesn't have to be loud. It doesn't have to come with yelling or fists slammed on tables. Sometimes it's just the way a man stands when he's protecting his child. The way his voice stays steady, even when his heart is breaking. The way he looks someone in the eye and demands dignity, not just for his daughter, but for every kid who's ever been made to feel small. That kind of love is loud in its silence. It commands the room without raising a single decibel. When Jada's father stood there, he wasn't just speaking for her. He was speaking for every student who had swallowed their pain in silence. Every black child who had been told, directly or indirectly, that they didn't belong. Every kid who had ever felt invisible, or worse, targeted. That day, he didn't just speak truth. He brought truth into the room. And truth, when delivered with love, is impossible to ignore. It doesn't just settle in the air. It moves things. It shakes walls. I saw it in Ms. Carter's eyes. For the first time, she looked small. Not because someone tried to humiliate her, but because she was being held accountable by something greater than rules or policy, by a father's unwavering love, and a deep, unshakable sense of right and wrong. And that's when I understood something bigger. When someone refuses to stay silent in the face of injustice, they don't just protect one child, they empower all of us. Because courage is contagious. When one person stands up, it gives others permission to do the same. It breaks the illusion that nothing can be done. It reminds us that we all have voices, and that those voices matter. That moment gave me strength I didn't know I had. It made me believe that maybe, just maybe, we don't always have to swallow our pain and keep our heads down. That we can speak. That we should speak. And when we do, something changes. That's what Jada's father gave us that day. More than just a defense. More than a speech. he gave us a spark. And from that spark, we found a little more light to walk in. Thank you so much for watching. If this video spoke to you, taught you something new, or made you feel something, don't forget to support the channel, like the video to help it reach more people. Comment below. I'd love to hear your thoughts, your story, or what stood out to you. Share this with someone who needs to hear it, and if you haven't already, subscribe and hit the bell so you don't miss the next one. Every bit of support helps us grow and keep telling the stories that matter.